know, the beautiful thing about being part of this platform, being part of the headspace, is that I get the privilege to talk exclusively as a hip-hop head. I get the opportunity to talk as a real student of the culture of hip-hop. I need you all to understand that when I do these reviews, that when we do these episodes, Notakeza, we're speaking first and foremost on behalf of the culture. South African hip-hop, but hip-hop in general. This is not a pop culture YouTube channel.
Yeah.
We are here to address issues that are at the core of the evolution of a culture we love, a culture that we took from our brothers and sisters in the diaspora, made our own, gave our own expression, and were able to, in our own way, say, I'm hip-hop. You know what I mean? And as a result, when I speak here, I need you all to understand that I see myself as an expert. You might ask why. Go check the credentials. But my personal path, mission, and experience in the culture, whether as a practitioner in the form of rapping, whether as somebody who has done the journalistic aspect of trying to really collect and archive the story of hip-hop in this country, I'm basically trying to say VJ speaks for hip-hop. So I want to go into the idea that because hip-hop is filtered into the culture industry, capitalism industrializes everything. In a nutshell, what that means is that we are forced to take what we do for love and have a way to make it work in commerce and have a way to make it work commercially. Now, those are two totally different modes of expression. I'm sure a lot of you love hip-hop from a place of what it does for you emotionally, spiritually. And if you happen to be a practitioner of this art form, whether as a graph writer, whether as a breaker, whether as an MC, whether as an entrepreneur, whether as a promoter, if you are active in hip-hop, not only as a lover, but also somebody who is active in building the culture, there comes this difficulty of having to translate your love into something people can buy into. And what this does is that it creates two totally different standards of measuring value and as a result measuring greatness. Last time I had a rant about Kendrick Lamar, we would chilling with the homies, Dihleli, Nebraya, no alias, shout out to No Alias, right in this sofa, this beautiful abode.
That was last year.
That was last year.
Yeah.
And I was emphasizing how I really felt K-Dot, the brother from Compton, wasn't the greatest of all time. Now, I know a lot of people might attack me for this, but I emphasize the fact that I felt in the emergence of what we call the 5 principles: originality, mass appeal, emotional depth, technicality, and consistency. There were things about Kendrick Lamar's evolution, particularly for me, his originality, which felt shaky. I couldn't give it to him, and as a result, he had 4 out of the 5 principles. But there's more to this that makes me hesitate and even go as far as saying revolt against giving Kendrick Lamar my own personal pedestalized moment of greatness. And I'm here to break this down because in the heat of a lot of things that have been happening in millennial hip-hop, where now the millennial era, the era of the 3 kings we knew as Cole, Kendrick, and Drake, is basically ushering itself into its conclusion. All 3 artists have now dropped very interesting albums that have defined their careers. There's a huge question mark looming over what is next for all of them, because I guess any hip-hop lover can actively feel that we are in a different time. We're in a time where the dreads are blonde, the kids are younger, the jewelry is more colorful, the grills are back in fashion in very eccentric ways. The hip-hop is being melded into this neo-African dynamic of valuing tribal pattern and vocal projection over lyricism. It's becoming more emo. It's lending itself more to singing than to rapping. We've been asking these questions as the headspace to try and understand where is hip-hop going. And I feel like Tifuna just break a net so I can address this one issue of Kendrick Lamar. I started this off by talking about speaking for the hip-hop culture. Hip-hop culture tends to intertwine with pop culture because now hip-hop is pop culture. It's popular. It's the biggest quote-unquote genre in the musical scope. But that still doesn't mean that everybody who listens to it is a fan of the culture. The one aspect that's really coming in the foreground is rap music. So really, to be technical about it, we should probably be saying rap music is becoming popular culture and not necessarily hip-hop.
Hip-hop is a culture, it's not, yeah.
Because nobody is out there giving millions and billions to graph writers. Nobody's giving millions and billions and endorsement deals and brand connections and this mass fully fledged marketed awareness to DJs, to the B-boys and B-girls. Nobody's doing that. The cult of rap music has completely fully fledged itself into pop culture. So when we're talking rap, we're talking an aspect of hip-hop, not hip-hop as a whole. So I think one of the great misnomers that happens a lot is instead of us saying rap music, we say best hip-hop album. You get what I mean? We say best hip-hop artist. When really, if you look at somebody like a Young Thug or a Kanye West, do they really represent hip-hop culture or pop culture? I love Kanye, but Kanye is not an extension of hip-hop culture. He's an extension of popular music. He strives to transcend and place himself among the Michael Jacksons, the Elvis Presleys, fucking Walt Disney. Kanye is a multimedia artist who's not necessarily interested in building the hip-hop culture. He's interested in building art, and he operates at the center of a whole lot of things. Visual art, fashion, and music. And he happened to break out as a producer and as a rapper. That's rap music. That's not necessarily hip-hop culture. Kendrick Lamar is an expression of this current binary that's been sold to us and that a lot of people have kind of eaten up. This whole idea that kukho conscious hip-hop on one side, which is for people who talk about the messages that really matter, the things that get to the core of what capitalism isn't addressing. And on the other side, you just have, I don't know, regular hip-hop, regular rap. I want to call bullshit on that. I want to say from the very beginning, you cannot separate capitalism from the birth of hip-hop culture. These were young inner city kids who saw no other way of breaking out of their struggle other than make money, money, make money, money, money. We've heard many a chant centered around development as building more wealth in the literal money sense. So I want to say that rappers have addressed the struggle of being poor and fundamentally trying to grow and develop through just getting more money. Because when you have more money, you have more choices. And when you have more choices, the scope of your life changes drastically. So, number one, when hip-hop first began, it began in the party. It really was not necessarily about righteous living and community activism. Yes, those things were implied because from young kids taking what they had and building a culture which was basically recycling the ashes of their experiences into useful things. Taking the turntables, taking the old vinyls, taking the old music from the our parents' collection, taking our creativity, our movement and our expression and reinventing it in a new way. This empowerment fantasy, this building of the soul and the self through this art form in all of its variations. Now America caught hold of it. And the most marketable aspect of it was rap. Rappers became at the forefront of what we consider hip-hop. And rappers have always addressed the good time. Rappers have always addressed the place to be. One of the most powerful phrases in hip-hop is, are you all in a place to be? Because rappers would be live and direct in the party, talking to the people, getting them to see if they're aware of their mood and their emotion and where they're going and how they're feeling in this exact moment. So I think this conversation of how we're feeling has always been both how we're feeling in the sense of our struggle and how we're feeling in the sense of our joy. There is no rapper who has thoroughly just been about the money, just like there is no rapper who has thoroughly just been about the internal experience of the human condition. So there is no need to have a conscious hip-hop because there is no unconscious hip-hop. Hip-hop in all of its aspects, to the breaking, to the DJing, is something done by people who are conscious of what they want out of it. And because hip-hop was built and created by people who knew, who consciously understood what they wanted from it, we cannot have a conscious and an unconscious hip-hop, because consciousness surges throughout every momentum that hip-hop is about. But just because you feel that somebody else's consciousness leads them into building a capitalistic empire and a business where they become a greater part of the capitalistic engine, and maybe mhlambi when you think what we should be doing with our hip-hop money is going directly into the community, localizing our wealth, creating solidarity economies. Maybe the idea of wearing a suit and going into gala dinners and shaking hands with white people aesthetically represents something that is not community-centered to you. And I think that's what's at the core of a lot of this so-called conscious, unconscious labeling, is the fact that if you look a certain kind of way, yeah, then people define you as a conscious person. Yeah. If you have dreadlocks, yeah, if you speak of Africa in the romantic historical sense, if you're consciously trying to use your rapping in the pedantic sense, and I mean you're trying to actually consciously teach through your raps, if you're trying to consciously teach through your graph art, then people consider you conscious. But that's not the term. Maybe we should be calling it pedantic rap. Maybe we should be calling it educational rap. You know? Yeah. But I'm just trying to say the term conscious is not true to the experience. Some artists choose to use their art to teach. Some artists choose to just use their art for catharsis, for self-expression. We had this conversation last time with Krimba Krumba. What is the real mode of art? That's still an ongoing conversation. I want you to become a part of this conversation. And I want to use Kendrick as a case study to kind of give us a question. Because from my perspective, I feel that ever since pop culture took a hold of this aspect of hip-hop we call rap music, the ideas that have been at the forefront of what rap is about have mainly been for the benefit of commercial entities. Because now McDonald's understands that it can use Pusha T to sell its burgers. Because now Ciroc understands that it can partner with a Puffy. It can be in the, you know, you get what I'm saying? Now these mass marketed brands understand. After all the rappers were talking about the lifestyle and the things that they aspired to, because before Gucci was willing to have a person like a Virgil Abloh taking aspects of the aesthetic that emerged from hip-hop fashion, rappers were rapping about Gucci. Dapper Dan was busy doing his creative Gucci-inspired jackets and just clothing, yo. So Rappers echoed their aspirations into the industry ate it up and was able to regurgitate it back to us. Now, I feel like a lot of us don't understand that a lot of the artists we come across have actually been transplanted, created, molded, and given to us by this industry. These are not people who emerge organically. Because now pop culture understands that it's trying to sell a product. So when record labels look at a rapper, they don't look at the talent, they don't look at the skill. This is what I'm getting to. Hip-hop culture and pop culture have two totally different standards of greatness. If you're a hip-hop head, you appreciate artistry that is about getting to the core of the human experience, that is about being authentic, that is about being creative, that is about being at the cutting edge of style and substance. But if you're about pop culture, you're looking at what's trending. You're looking at, will this appeal to the current... Nigga, I got a frog in my throat because some serious issues.
Yeah.
You're looking at, will it sell?
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of the artists who come to us as heroes have been manufactured
and
by
packaged.
capitalism and packaged.
Yeah.
People think that the artists have a voice to speak about whatever they want. I challenge that. They have the opportunity to speak about whatever they want in the context of what sells. So let's please not get it twisted. When rappers talk about power to the people, when rappers address social issues, when Kendrick Lamar said we gonna be alright at the height of Black Lives Matter, when he went to this country, South Africa, went to Robben Island and was highly deeply impacted as a child of the diaspora by the experiences of people like Nelson Mandela and Sobukwe and Biko, and he came back and he imbued that into his product To Pimp a Butterfly. He was speaking from a place that was sincere, but pop culture has to translate it in a way that is ironic. It has to give it back to us as something we can buy into. So again, my first thing about Kendrick Lamar is that his authenticity, and I've addressed this in the first video, where if you truly listen to Kendrick, we're going to be going into this, we're going to be structurally breaking him down, going into the aspects that a lot of people don't know. Because if you're a hip-hop head, you know how to listen to the pattern of an artist's influence. But if you listen to pop culture, you don't know where a lot of these strands come from. And this is my problem. When we're talking to audiences, a pop culture audience will not pick up who influenced Kendrick, because they're not hip-hop heads. They don't care about hip-hop. They just want good music. Can Kendrick Lamar make good music? Yes, he can. But if you are a hip-hop head, then you've gone into the archive of the influences. Then you hear the Wheezy. Then you hear the Eminem. Then you hear the Andre 3000. And a lot of the things that Kendrick is doing won't hit you immediately from a place that sounds fresh. Because if you've listened to Aquemini, because if you've listened to Lil Wayne's early mixtapes, you can see that Kendrick Lamar is an artist in the tradition of historicism. I've said this before, that there are artists who are historicists and there are artists who are futurists. Historicists reinvent the cycle, futurists break it and send us into newer frontiers. Kendrick has never sent us into newer frontiers. To Pimp a Butterfly was the rendition of something that Common did when he did Electric Circus, that Arrested Development did when they produced their debut album, that a lot of artists have done to make a pro-black album influenced by funk and jazz. Because if you understand hip-hop, then you understand that some of the earliest artists to be sampled were artists like the Funkadelics. George Clinton was part and parcel of Kendrick understanding how to take that P-Funk movement and reinvent it into the modern age. So this is my issue. That's why I said I speak as a hip-hop head. And if you ain't a hip-hop head, you're going to lose the lineage. You're not going to understand who influenced who influenced who, and who influenced who. So your idea of a GOAT is going to be based on who sells the most albums, who's on TV the most, who do I hear the most, and as a result, who's part of this collective imagination that makes up this great advert that pop culture shoves down our throat so that we can buy Nikes and go to KFC. We need to tell the difference between the things that have been manufactured for us to eat and the things we choose to make for ourselves. Going into your garden and planting a cabbage is not the same as buying a cabbage from ShopRite. The ShopRite cabbage has been imbued with certain chemicals to last on a shelf. The cabbage that you choose to grow in your own garden is your hands and depends upon your attention and your focus. So when it comes to culture, hip-hop is about us. What we do, how we contribute will determine how it grows. But pop culture isn't about us. Pop culture is about people who already have shelves there waiting for us to occupy. And guess what? There's definitely a black culture shelf. There's definitely a pro-black shelf. There's definitely a shelf for people who feel like the revolution is still part and parcel of capitalism. Where you can wear the beret and say Amandla and go into the Gucci store. But those who truly understand the pulse of revolution know that the two cannot coincide. Capitalism is oppressing us. So how can revolution be in the context of capitalism? Kendrick Lamar lives in a great house. He's able, through the money he makes from being a popular artist, to provide for his family. I respect that. However, let's not misconstrue the words, the brand he uses of being pro-black for authentically being something that will change our lives. Kendrick Lamar is not the Jesus Christ of modern day millennial hip-hop. Kendrick Lamar is not this authentic, visceral symbol of innovation. Kendrick Lamar is not the king of new age rap. Kendrick Lamar is the latest capitalistic transplant for pro-black aspirations to find a product that they can buy into. Kendrick Lamar is that thing that you devour to pacify you into thinking change is happening when it really isn't. Kendrick Lamar speaks to our hearts, but none of it really gets to our hands. Because ultimately, true change is activism, and there are rappers, there are graffiti artists who are about that activism, who are about that street on the ground work, who are about dismantling the socio-economic shackles. But there are MCs who are about the prose and the praise and appearing as if they're about the culture, when really they have the heart for it, but they're not dismantling. Hip-hop heads follow the lineage of the creative hip-hop historical dynamic. Pop culture enthusiasts listen to the radio or whatever current stream gives them what's hot. The two do not coincide and work in conjunction with each other. If you're a hip-hop head, then you understand that you are rooted in the latest authentic expressions of what the culture is about. But if you're a pop culture head, then you're feeding your opinion based on branded, commercialized, really essentially watered down ideas. Because for every huge, massive artist you'll find in the kaleidoscope of pop music is really the underground influence that they stem from. So what am I saying? Kendrick Lamar is an amazing artist who has shown us the importance of studying capitalism, the importance of understanding how to be part of pop culture, and how to understand what your brand is. And I ain't hating on that. That's a hustle. Understanding that blackness is something people can buy into is a hustle. But it's not the same as really deconstructing blackness and understanding what's at the core of people's issues. Early on at some point, rapper No Name attacked Kendrick and Cole, saying where were they at the height of a lot of black instability. J. Cole responded back with something I found curious, where he basically distanced himself from the activism and said he doesn't really know a lot of it like that. He speaks from the heart, but he's not a real activist. And this is out there for you all to check out. That beef, quote unquote, was really a dialogue between real politics and pop culture manifestation. From the moment he dropped Section 80, I had a feeling, I had an inkling that Kendrick Lamar would be a different artist. Here's what his accomplishment is. He is an artist who has been able to, in the internet age, navigate a place for himself to balance pop culture songwriting with being able to keep messages that are pertinent to the black experience right in the headlines. He's able to thread that fine balance of being able to turn it up, but also turn people in to reflect a little. So this is not a rant that is denigrating Kendrick Lamar's value as an artist. Being in the scope of pop culture is an important place to be. Black people who operate that space are able to become triggers for a lot of issues to be spoken about. But as we know about speaking, is that it has a certain limit. And we have to, at a certain point in time, say actions always speak louder than words.
Yeah.
So if we really want to look at the measure of Kendrick Lamar's artistry, let's look at his actions. And from what I see a capitalist nigga. And there might not be anything necessarily wrong with being that. A capitalist nigga wearing the mask of revolution, wearing the mask of militancy, echoing it out for people who desire it, but not really initiating it. Because there are rappers like Nipsey Hussle who were able to go to the grassroots, build real down-to-earth economies, speak truth to power, and actively do the work. This is not for everybody. So I think when we attach messiahhood to MCs, we should ask ourselves, who have they really saved? And in what capacity? Kendrick Lamar hasn't saved anybody. He's inspired many, but he really has not been an artist who we can consider insurrectionary, resurrectionary. He's an artist who simply neatly fit into the context of what capitalism is about and help those who consider themselves woke, those who consider themselves conscious, have a place and an artist to jam to in the club. I want to use the next episode after this to actually technically go into the evidence of why I think Kendrick Lamar's artistic integrity is not as phenomenal as people make it out to be. And I'll tell you why I want to do this. I want to do this because I speak for hip-hop. And pop culture is threatening hip-hop culture's ability to be able to assess its own growth. We cannot be swallowed by pop culture and think that that is a benefit to us. Hip-hop has its own economy. And everybody that loves hip-hop has to understand this. Because the Grammys are not for us. The Grammys are a pop culture expression. We need to stop using the standards and the accolades of pop culture to measure hip-hop excellence. Hip-hop must have its own measure of growth. Because it is its own culture. Whether in South Africa or abroad. And I'm speaking now for the headspace, in the headspace. South African hip-hop practitioners are doing the same thing. Our sahas are being swallowed up by pop culture. Our understanding of what hip-hop is also narrowed down to rappers. The most entertaining thing happening in our so-called hip-hop space is Casper Nyovest boxing with a house vocalist.
Imagine.
This is pop culture, folk. And that's cool. Pop culture is pop culture.
But people mustn't say, I know, is resurrecting hip-hop.
Hip-hop.
I know.
So this is a conversation about hip-hop culture and pop culture and how they collide using Kendrick Lamar as
the case study.
As a case study. Because again, to close this off, Kendrick is the hero that was made for us to buy into, not the hero that emerged naturally from our midst. He's from the hood, but he understood that to get out of the hood, he has to play the capitalist game. And in playing the capitalist game, he's not in the same stature as a Tupac Shakur. He's not in the same stature as a Nipsey Hussle. And I will go into it. I'll leave you on a cliffhanger. But right now, I just want to have you thinking. If you're a hip-hop head, are you using pop culture standards to measure your growth and your excellence? Are we using a standard that really should apply to Beyonce and make it apply to graph writers, to b-boys, to rappers? Are we misconstruing pop culture and hip-hop? Is it time for us to be clear about where we stand when it comes to the cultures we love and the cultures that have been created for us to fit into the mold of commercial power? I'm the brother from the ancient mother, VJ. It's been an interesting conversation. I know you're mad at me right now because I know the cult of Kendrick Lamar is large and I want them to come after me because it's all for the love of hip-hop in South Africa and abroad. We've broken tradition here. We're using an American artist as a case study, but we're still not deviating from how this applies to our country. And I'm going to bring it back home. But I just wanted to use the world so that we can come and understand the capacity of how far we can go with this culture we call hip-hop. Essentially, Takeza is a hip-hop activist. I am a hip-hop activist. The Headspace is about hip-hop activism. Through giving you exclusive journalistic insights, through sparking the conversations we consider to be the most important right now about South Africa. And right now, we think the most important conversation is the standards we use to assess our greatness are not based on hip-hop, they're based on pop culture. If Kendrick is your king, you need to ask yourself why. Do we even need kings? Is another question. Please talk to me in the comment section, and if you can subscribe your Muren, because it's about time to be part of this great movement. If you love hip-hop, if you love SA hip-hop, and if you want to be a part of this ongoing discussion and dialogue about where we're going and how we're going to get there, talk to us. It's hashtag THS all over them platforms. Check us out. Please talk about us to the peeps. Start these conversations. And if you want to link these videos and chop them up and put them on your TikTok and put them on your Instagram, please credit us. Because we're trying to grow the movement. We're trying to grow the culture. Siyabulele.